Now, Zelensky is ethnically Russian and he's a Jew. Okay? The family spoke Russian at home. Ukrainian is not his first language. Russian is his first language. Okay? Born in a city called Kryvyi Rih. The whole of East Bank Ukraine never belonged to Ukraine. It was given to Ukraine in 1922 by Stalin, and then Crimea was given to by Khrushchev to Ukraine in 1954. News portal, a Ukrainian news portal run by Ukrainians, not by Russians, that has exposed the fact that he got caught in a big cocaine bust. Within 2 months of coming to office, the editors of that newspaper had disappeared. The newspaper is taken offline. You can't even find it on the Wayback Machine right now. So he's done a thorough scrub of the cocaine busts in which he's been implicated at that time. Starts realizing 2 weeks down the line that maybe he went overboard, but he's still not learnt his lessons, because day before yesterday, he actually sent an apology letter to Trump, which the Ukrainians were insisting was not a letter, it was just a Twitter post a week back. Now, you should think, being Finland or Ukraine, you would say, bhai, the Russians haven't attacked us, we are not going to get involved in this. No. You threaten them, you go on threaten them saying, see, Russia is going to do this, Russia is going to do this, Russia is going to do this. You keep goading Russia. And when Russia does it, or Finland is like, oh my God, now we need to join NATO. My estimate was they would choose Vietnam. But India, the messaging is so crude. Ghar mein ghus ke mara. You may not be such a threat, but you're literally upgrading your threat status for them, because Indians are stupid. We don't maintain archives, we don't maintain records, we don't maintain a historical memory. India is the only idiot country which, after an invader come and slaughtered you, destroyed all your temples, you come up with bullshit like Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb. We are such third-rate people. We seek the validation of the white man so obsessively, compulsively. What do? If you see a snake and a Bhutanese, kill the snake first. Kill the Bhutanese first. Never kill snakes. Snakes are very good. There is a reason they are considered sacred in India. Do you know why snakes are considered sacred? Every other civilization treats the snake as evil. You've actually gone to a much, much more ideological, much, much more dangerous, much, much more duplicitous guy than Justin Trudeau.
Hello friends, my name is Chitresh Kapoor and welcome to Defensive Offence podcast, your go-to podcast when it comes to matters of national security and defense. Today, once again, we have Abhijit Iyer Mitra, probably the most requested person in our podcast. Welcome Abhijit to our podcast.
You forgot to say the most hated person in the podcast as well. But sure.
All right.
Yeah.
So,
and feel free to hate, just like and subscribe, and feel free to leave comments as well. Please leave comments. Gali galoch, perfectly okay. You can call me whatever you want. But don't just mouth it. Type it. Yeah.
So on that note, we're going to start off with what is happening recently in the White House, particularly with Donald Trump and Zelensky, and Zelensky came there and we saw a lot of heated argument, which Trump himself said is fantastic for TV. I don't know what that man was thinking. I mean, we're talking about the most powerful man on earth. You're having an argument with him. You are dependent on his weapons and basically you are alive because of him. And I still remember seeing that photographs of Ukrainian ambassador in US, and she was, saying,
yes,
kya kiya is bande ne. So I like to hear from you. What do you think is going on? And now recent development, Zelensky is coming to Saudi Arabia. I think he's about to meet MBS. What do you think is going on?
So, the problem with first, this is like Kashmir. Till Modi, nobody had any interest in solving that Kashmir situation. Not the army, not the CRPF, not the terrorists, not Farooq and Omar Abdullah, not Mehbooba Mufti, not the Congress government, and not all the NGOs. You know why? Because it's called a conflict economy, where everybody gets invested in the conflict. For the army and CRPF, it is, hum jang ladne ja rahe hain. The more terrorists you kill, the higher the prospects for promotion, rapid promotion and things like that. For the terrorists, it's obvious reasons, right? For Omar and Farooq Abdullah and Mehbooba Mufti, it is again obvious reasons that as long as the terrorism continues, they will complete unaccountable spending. And Kashmir was one of the most corrupt states where the money just used to be flittered away on anything and everything. it turns out 55% of the population was also invested in terrorism because there was no tourism or anything happening out there. So everything was dependent on security forces. You supply potatoes, mutton, onion to the security forces and things like that. Provide buses, provide cars, whatever services to the security forces. Them, the service providers and their family were almost 55% of the population, right? And obviously the Congress had no interest because they were all NGO dependent, and all these NGOs used to do was raise huge amounts of funding and hold conferences, Bangkok, Tokyo, UK, Washington. It was a full dhanda. Okay, so and this was, I don't think people realize this was hundreds, thousands, crores of rupees
every year for 50 years.
For 50 years. Okay, so this is called a conflict economy. Now Ukraine has become a conflict economy. There are people going from 5-star to 5-star hotel. You know, this fellow Zelensky's wife, she goes to Paris for shopping and all kinds of things like that. She has huge expenditures like this. So this is where it stands. So
and it's all US taxpayers' money.
It's all, not just US taxpayer, European taxpayer.
Of course.
And nobody gives a damn about the actual Ukrainians dying out there. Because they don't get a say in all of this. Now, let's come to Zelensky. To understand why the White House happened, we need to go all the way back to 2019. Now, when Zelensky became president. Now, Zelensky is ethnically Russian and he's a Jew. Okay. The family spoke Russian at home. Ukrainian is not his first language. Russian is his first language. Okay. Born in a city called Kryvyi Rih. Now they call it Kryvyi Rih. I can't do these Ukrainian pronunciations. I'm like Chernigov, not Chernihiv, not Kiev. It's Kiev. And it is Kryvyi Rih for me. Okay. Now Kryvyi Rih mein this fellow was born. And you know, he learns how to, let's put it charitably, he's morally flexible. Okay. He's completely propped up by this corrupt oligarch billionaire. He claims he's not supported by any billionaire, but everybody knows he's supported by a billionaire. He is completely supported by all these NGOs, NGO type foundations. So then you automatically know that Soros and Omidyar and people like that have a role to play in all of this. Bill Gates and whatever. I don't know the exact ones, but it's similar patterns of funding. Now his promise, now there's east of the Dnieper, what is called left bank Ukraine, and west of the Dnieper, what's called right bank Ukraine. Right bank Ukraine is overwhelmingly Ukrainian ethnically and lots of Poles.
A lot of?
Poles.
Okay.
Poles, Hungarians, Romanians, because what happens is, remember, almost half of Western Ukraine used to be Poland, Hungary, Romania, which was taken away from these specific countries after World War II and given by Stalin to Ukraine.
Okay.
And the whole of East Bank Ukraine never belonged to Ukraine. It was given to Ukraine in 1922 by Stalin. And then Crimea was given to by Khrushchev to Ukraine in 1954.
Okay.
Including some parts of West Bank Ukraine, which is Odessa, which was always a Russian majority city. Now, he promised the entire Russian majority that, you know, relations have deteriorated. We need a reconciliation. And it was all about reconciliation. So for the first time in a long time, both the Western Ukrainian side and the Eastern Russian side voted overwhelmingly for a ethnically Russian president. Now, within 6 months of coming to office, he realizes he's completely short-circuited by all the power politics around him. Now, he can't focus on that, but he focuses on his personal gripes. There is a news portal, a Ukrainian news portal run by Ukrainians, not by Russians, that has exposed the fact that he got caught in a big cocaine bust. Within 2 months of coming to office, the editors of that newspaper are disappeared. The newspaper is taken offline. You can't even find it on the Wayback Machine right now.
Okay.
So he's done a thorough scrub of the cocaine busts in which he's been implicated at that time. Next, he realizes that the way to become more popular is to start cozying up to the same Nazi-aligned people who were opposing him and who he said were the cause of the Russian-Ukrainian ethnic divide that had cropped up.
Okay.
Namely Stepan Bandera's followers and people who idealize Stepan Bandera and people like that. And it proves very, very profitable for him. Initially, he tried to control the Azov brigades and things like that. In the end, the Azovs ended up controlling him. But he's been very smart. He sent Azovs to die in large numbers, so he eliminated his enemies also. So this is not the nice guy, right? You don't get to be president being a nice guy. So this guy is one real nasty piece of shit, always has been, even before the war broke out. We need to be very clear about this. Don't be misled by the fact that he came in drag or he played the piano with his penis or anything like that. He then starts getting more and more down the Ukrainian nationalist path, which unfortunately, whether one likes it or not, there's a way of being nationalist. So for example, in India, we're very happy to celebrate Netaji Bose without celebrating the Japanese or the Germans or condoning their war crimes in any form or way, right? In Finland, they're very happy to celebrate General von Mannerheim without celebrating his the fact that they were German allies or whatever. Ukraine could have gone down that path. They did not. They went on. Now, you can say Stepan Bandera was like Mannerheim or Bose, except that's completely wrong. Mannerheim and Bose did not carry out atrocities. Stepan Bandera, there is so much literature in his own words where he's calling for the ethnic decimation of Russians and Jews. Zelensky is both a Russian and a Jew.
Deadly combination.
Yeah. So, it becomes, he's essentially Nazi aligned at this point. And that is when Putin realizes that this is a fellow who came promising to reverse course, but he's turned out to be worse than everybody else who came before him. Because think of him as the Kejriwal of Ukraine, essentially. We weren't seeing the signs at that time. At least I wasn't. Some people were. Congratulations to them. Now, because he's an NGO product, in that first year, he also starts taking on Trump, which was the last year of Trump's first presidency.
2020, end 19.
Okay. Now, what happens out there is that Trump is the first guy who started supplying the Ukrainians with weapons, which is why there was that line in that showdown, Obama gave you sheets, I gave you javelins.
Javelins, yes.
And those javelins were absolutely crucial when the Russian invasion happened and they surrounded Kiev. It was the javelins taking out the Russian tanks. So he understands what security guarantees are. And the minerals deal that he proposed was in fact not putting American troops on the ground, which would have been a red line for Russia. It is putting Americans on the ground, American companies on the ground, who, if they get killed in an invasion, brings America into the war automatically. So it is both, deterrence is described as, a failure of deterrence is described as an insufficiency. There is a positive definition of deterrence and there's a negative definition of deterrence. One is the insufficiency of reassurance and the other is the insufficiency of deterrence. To deter, you need both reassurance and deterrence. It's not just, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you. It's, I am not going to kill you, but I have the ability to kill you. So both reassurance and deterrence combine to form what is strategic deterrence. Now, he understands that very well. This is what he's offered this guy. Now, throughout that last year of Trump 1, Zelensky keeps adding fuel to the fire. He goes out of his way to keep supporting Democrat narratives on Trump's Russia collusion, which cost him the election. So remember, Trump was already very pissed off. This is not a guy you want to mess with again. In spite of that, he was going out on a limb for you, putting American people on the ground.
People on the ground.
Okay. This is the context in which we're talking. Of course, in the 4 years that Trump was not president, Zelensky was literally campaigning for the Democrats in Pennsylvania, shit-talking, trash-talking Trump
J.D.
throughout.
Vance actually did mention that.
Yeah, he did. And finally, when Trump comes back to power, now you should be much chastised. The problem is all these European leaders, they've created this image of the superhero. Okay. He's a Superman from Kiev or whatever, like the ghost of Kiev. This is the Superman from Kiev. He started believing, you never drink your own Kool-Aid. He started believing his own bullshit. That's his problem. Now, understand what is the deal that Trump has given you. No. Or he understands it and he doesn't want it. I prefer the second explanation, that he understands exactly what it is and he doesn't want it because he doesn't want peace. Why? Because
Money.
It's a conflict economy.
Money.
There's chronic corruption in Ukraine right now. There's no transparency. You don't know where the money is going. That is the only explanation that makes sense. The other thing is to assume that Zelensky is an idiot. But the reason I went into the history of Zelensky is to show he has never been an idiot. He's always been a very, very cold, calculating, duplicitous opportunist. So this was not the stupidity. This was not the cocaine talking. This was his own calculation talking that he wants to sabotage any peace, any chance of peace with the Russians, which he's doing even now. Incidentally, as we're talking, it turns out that Ukraine was the source of the attacks on X, the massive attacks on X that happened yesterday, the cyber attacks. What was Twitter? And they've launched a massive drone strike against Moscow and things like that today, which has killed lots of people. And these were shrapnel warheads which were intended to kill lots of people. Okay. They've fallen into houses and things like that, independent houses, and killed people.
And we're talking about now the Russian territory.
Deep inside Russian territory, in Moscow. No, they've attacked Moscow.
Right, Moscow. Yes.
Moscow faced the biggest attack today. So this guy is out to destroy any peace deal. So what happens is Scott Bessent first goes, the finance minister of America for an Indian audience, goes to Ukraine. He gets ignored. Zelensky is sleeping and can't come out to meet Scott Bessent. Finally, the meeting happens. It's a very stormy meeting. Now, why should it be stormy? If you want peace, now American troops being in Donetsk and Lugansk, not troops, American feet on the ground, means there's a higher chance of Ukraine getting that territory back, right? So none of it makes sense. Zelensky's reaction doesn't make sense unless you look at him as the Kejriwal of Ukraine. Calculating opportunist. Duplicitous calculating opportunist. Second, at Munich, he meets J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio, agrees to everything at the meeting, but is very difficult at the meeting and goes out and trash talks. Says, I'm never going to sign this deal. Why would you not want to sign this deal? Why? Because remember, there's more money at stake. There's $350 billion worth of Russian assets, which are frozen but need to be seized, which he wants for the payment of reconstruction. He doesn't want, and Ukrainian resources are meant to be for Ukrainians, which is basically him to take out as and when he wants. Okay. The third part of this happens when he lands up at the White House. Now, I've given you the context of his own behavior in the past, extremely dictatorial behavior. Now, you can say it's because of elections. No, he's banned the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. He's banned anything associated with Russia. He's thrown several members of his parliament in jail. You're seeing the kind of, street justice that's meted out to any Russians in Ukraine and things. Ethnic Russians of Ukrainian citizenship in Ukraine. They stripped naked, tied to poles in the middle of winter, heads smashed in with hammers and things like that. He does nothing about it, by the way. So the man is a dictator more than just not holding elections. Okay, so when Trump says something, it actually, when you hear Trump the first time, you're like, this guy's talking shit. And then when you actually dig, you see he's condensed it down, but he's actually quite accurate, right? So what ends up happening is, nobody's asking him any questions. Everybody's asking Trump. And he keeps intervening and contradicting Trump. So if you watch that entire 52-minute clip, he intervenes at 13 minutes, he intervenes at 24 minutes, he intervenes at 33 minutes. I think the 14-minute clip is where he's calling Putin a terrorist. You're not there to discuss Putin or Russia. You're there to sign the mineral deal, put on smiles and get the hell out. But no, he wants to relitigate the entire matter in front of the cameras. He takes out the photos and shows him. You think the American president hasn't seen these photos? Right? This is being done for the cameras.
This is the time when JD Vance's propaganda videos and
this is before that. This is at around 13, 14 minutes in. That happens at 40 minutes in. So what ends up happening is at 14 minutes, Trump accepts. He doesn't, 11 or 14, I forget now. At 24 minutes, Trump is like, okay, let him talk. And Trump kind of mildly pushes back. He says, you see this guy, he hates Putin. How do you deal with hate? I'm sure Putin has nothing nice to say. That's what he says in between, right? Now, he still doesn't get it, Zelensky. At 33 minutes, there's an even more robust intervention. And I'm being polite here when I say robust. And finally, at 40 minutes is when Vance is talking. And he talks about security guarantees. The mineral deal is your security guarantee. This has been explained to you ad nauseum. Trump has said he's given you security guarantees when he gave you the Javelin. So understand, when Zelensky brings up this point, it is malafide to its core. He's trying to humiliate Trump and Vance in the belief that they will not humiliate him in public. And JD understands that very, very well. And then he starts humiliating Zelensky in public, which Zelensky had not counted on happening. He also didn't count on the fact that Trump will then join in. And then you saw what happened. That was the root of the
JD as well, right? In Russian?
Yeah, he said suka blyat.
Yes.
Which is fucking shit.
Shit, okay.
Well, fuck bitch.
Has it ever happened something like this?
Suka is bitch, blyat is fuck. So he says suka blyat, which is fucking bitch. It's like, like when we say in the middle, I don't know entirely if it was, look, if as a Hindi speaker, you'll get this, right? I could look at you and say, or I can be frustrated with what you say and kya bol raha hai? So, I don't know if it was an abuse directed at JD Vance, to be fair, or it was, just an expression of frustration.
Either ways, you're not supposed
Either ways, you can't use that kind of language at a meeting like that.
Yes.
Okay. Trump makes fun of everybody and everyone. He talks down to everyone. But have you ever heard him use a profanity in public?
No, never.
You never use that at a diplomatic meeting, period. It doesn't matter what happens. You don't use that kind of language. He does. And what ends up happening is it's all down from there. Trump tells him to get out. So when he says you've insulted, people will say it's the meeting. All these left-wingers, they're saying it's at the meeting. He was just rude. It wasn't insulting. No, you've actually insulted because I've given you the history of what all has happened. And in the context of that, it was a calculated insult to both Trump and Vance. Okay. The thank you was a bit rich because he's actually said thank you very profusely several times before. But the left is very good at, picking and choosing a certain narrative and playing this up. So this is the story in the complete context of it. Okay? And that is what happened at that meeting. Since then, he then went back to Europe, had his feathers puffed up by Keir Starmer and all those people, which the Europeans are very good at doing. And he then starts realizing 2 weeks down the line that maybe he went overboard, but he's still not learnt his lessons. Because day before yesterday, he actually sent an apology letter to Trump, which the Ukrainians were insisting was not a letter. It was just a Twitter post a week back, which was expressing regret. It didn't say sorry, but day before yesterday, he's actually sent a letter saying sorry. But today, what does he do? Yesterday, he attacks Twitter with cyber operations. And today he attacks Moscow. Now, and this just before talks are going to begin in Saudi Arabia. How do you think Trump is going to take this? So he's going out of his way to sabotage things. The Europeans are collectively one of the most propagandized zombie, stupid people you will ever come
Can
across.
Europe actually, fight against the Russian
They
might?
can't. They can't. Are you kidding me? They can't.
Even if France and UK, they combine, they fight together.
Listen, these people have gotten so used to their social security benefits and
Right.
things like that. Do Britain and France have a core of very good troops who will fight for a while? Yes. Can they mobilize their populations to fight a 3-4 year long war with Russia? No. Okay. Remember, army recruitment is also based on the willingness of the population to serve.
Exactly.
Right. So it reflects the numbers. There is no people, unlike India, where, there are hundreds of people waiting and only like 2-3 will be selected every year per region. Their recruiters have to go out and tell people, come join the army and things like that.
They've become lazy over the last 75 years.
It's not lazy, it's the good life. You've never faced a threat to yourself.
That's because US has been protecting them.
Has been protecting you. So
Right.
you contribute crack troops to foreign operations, say Iraq, Libya, Syria, wherever, every now and then, but you don't actually face a threat to your own territory.
Right.
Now, as Kishore Mehbubani put it in that interview, I think a week back, he said that Europe has been, and I agree completely, nobody has a record of being more arrogant when combined with persistent strategic stupidity over the last 20 years. They've been wrong about every single thing that they've done in the last 20 years. NATO eastward expansion will not provoke Russia, really. Okay. We're going into free Libya. Where is Libya today? We're going into free Syria. Where is Syria today? We are going into liberate Iraq. Where is Iraq today? We are going to give freedom and democracy to Afghanistan. Where is Afghanistan today? Illegal. We need to provide refuge for all the trouble we've caused and chaos we've caused. How is your immigration going today?
The demographics have...
We need to spend more on social welfare. How are your economies going today? Now understand, right now Europe may feel a security threat. The moment the war in Ukraine stops, if it does, tell me, what will the average European want to spend money on? Will he want more money spent on his social welfare schemes, socialized healthcare, socialized education, socialized daycare, baby care, socialized higher
benefits.
education and all of that? Or will he want all of that reduced with the money being spent on defense?
Never.
It is not a case you can make to a European public after the Ukraine war is over. And this is why the European leaders are screeching right now. So they also have no interest in ending the war. The second reason they don't have an interest in ending the war is all proxy wars. You exhaust the enemy without spending much. Technically, if you look at it, America has spent realistically, including outlays and things, what about $180 billion maximum? Not 350, what Trump says, but 180 billion. 180 billion divided by, what's the population of America? 360 million?
35 crore. Yeah, 35 CR.
America has only spent $500 per person, per citizen on the Ukraine war. That's all. $500. That's nothing. That's what? That's like 40,000 rupees.
40,000 Indian rupees.
That's it. That's in the American context, that's nothing. So, and you've killed so many Russian soldiers, you've bogged Russia down. It's great return on investment. And the Europeans see it the exact same way. Europe is actually more populous than America. But it's important to remember that even the most powerful economy in Europe, Germany, is as poor or poorer than the poorest American states. That is the difference between America and Europe right now. They've spent so much on social welfare. They've destroyed their own economic viability. And the problem with social welfare is, like we see in Venezuela, no matter how much down it goes, you keep voting the same people in because you want what you're already getting. It's a dependency cycle you can't break. It's like the cocaine addict realizes that cocaine is not good for him, but he needs more and more and more cocaine. And that's exactly what you see in Europe happen right now. You've had people like Kaja Kallas, the EU foreign policy head, and the Danish Prime Minister, Mette, I don't know what her name is, Mette something, literally saying they want to break Russia apart. They want to regime change Russia, etc., etc. Tell me, what do you think Russia's thinking? This is a very systematic attempt now by Europe to prevent peace from happening. You think they really care about the Ukrainians? They don't give a shit about Ukraine or Ukrainians.
Zelensky doesn't care, so why will Europeans?
Zelensky doesn't care.
Why will Europeans care?
Yeah. For them, it's not a case of... they're very good at justifying their own lack of morality. Because, unlike, say, Indians won't get this, because in India, nobody trusts the government. And America is exactly like that. We may love Modi and all of that, but even the person who loves Modi the most look at the criticism of the harshest criticism of Modi, Nirmala Sitharaman, Rajnath, Nitin Gadkari or whatever actually comes from the right. The kind of gali galoch that the Indian right gives the Prime Minister is far harsher and more articulate even than what the left does in this country. And it's the same in America. In Europe, they trust their government, which is why I understand the Europeans for the last 200-300 years have consistently behaved like zombies. When Christianity is the fad, everybody has to be a profession. They have to profess their Christianity openly. Then they decide post-religion is good, so everybody has to demonstrably be post-religion. They decide nationalism is good and everybody is on the nationalism bandwagon. They decide racism is good, everybody is on the racism bandwagon. Then they decide after Hitler that nationalism is very bad, then for everybody nationalism becomes a bad word. They decide collectively racism is very bad, so then everybody has to be demonstrably, performatively anti-racist, even if they're not, right? This public performance thing and this trust on whatever the government says, it is indoctrinated and ingrained into Europeans. The government is your best friend. Trust the government. Okay. What do you do with a continent like that? No government is trustworthy. It is the nature. A government by its very nature is a kleptocracy. It is taking away from the people, keeping a portion for itself, and providing violence in return. Essentially, that's a state monopoly on violence, right? And you're saying trust them. No government must ever be trusted. But this is how the Europeans are. How do you overcome this? You can't. So it is what it is.
So do you think if at all Trump or US will get out of NATO, do you think that that's going to happen?
I don't think they leave NATO. But I think what they're going to do is they're going to teach the European countries a very hard lesson. Assume tomorrow that America says that as far as we're concerned, NATO is NATO up to 1990. We're not going to defend all the countries that joined NATO after 1990. Now, that's a classic way of playing divide and rule. Germany, France, and Britain will want to keep back what they already have. Will they be willing to throw Poland, Hungary, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia out in order to save themselves?
They would.
I think they would, but they may not, because they're so heavily indoctrinated by their own. See, they get carried away by their own rhetoric. Now, for me, what is most surprising is that it is the countries that have been screaming Russian threat the most, Poland and the 4 Baltic states, who are opposing Trump the most publicly. And I'm like, are you sure that's a smart strategy? Because you have the most to lose out here. Right? Trump can just make it an official statement that Article 5, we will not accept Article 5, an activation of Article 5 by anyone who joined after 1990. That's simple. and you withdraw all American troops from bases in those countries, what are you going to do?
For the benefit of our users, I want you to explain Article 5.
Article 5 is the collective defense clause of the NATO, this thing, which is any country declares it's been, the moment they declare we have been attacked, all other NATO members are obliged to come to help them.
Okay.
And declare war. The only time it has been used is when 9/11 happened in America, where NATO collectively, not that it meant, now this is the thing, 9/11 is a classic document, and the invocation of Article 5 is a classic document of what is to be, how Article 5 is meaningless. So 9/11 happens in America, the Twin Towers Pentagon all get attacked. NATO invokes Article 5, but what does it do?
Invades Afghanistan.
No. Did every country invade Afghanistan?
No.
Many countries sat it out. Many countries sat it out. Then they decided, correctly or otherwise, that Iraq was not part of it, so we won't join the invasion of Iraq also. So, America, there is a lot of room even within the NATO document for each country to interpret it. It is not mandatory when somebody says, I've been attacked, for America to share that argument with them. And that is why he's been very carefully. I think the building blocks are in place to do that, because he confused the aggressor and the victim. He said Zelensky started this war, Ukraine started this war, or at least he's been implying it. You know why? There's actually a history for it, and that goes to the Iran-Iraq war. So let me ask you a question. Who started the Iran-Iraq war?
Technically, well, I don't know.
Technically, Iraq started it because they attacked across the entire border one fine day.
Yes.
But I want you to read Time, Newsweek, even National Geographic, which is a known propaganda magazine. Actually, people don't realize National Geographic is propaganda, but it is. And all the magazines from that time, they will not identify Iraq as the aggressor. Because the Iraqi explanation was, for the last year, ever since Khomeini took over, there has been an accretion of events. There have been tens, if not hundreds of attacks. There was actually about 27, 28 attacks on the border. Individually, not enough to declare war, but cumulatively, it is enough for us to declare war. We're putting an end to this and we're going in.
And also because US was supporting Iraq.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course, leader of the free world.
And so they confuse the aggressor and the aggressee. Okay. Now, you can use that with Ukraine. You can say, well, Ukraine, you attacked Russia. So it is collective defense. It is not collective offense. If Turkey decides to invade Syria, which it has on several occasions, NATO does not have to help Turkey. But if Turkey is attacked by somebody, they have to help Turkey. If they decide Ukraine is the aggressor and Europe is helping Ukraine and getting bombed for it, sorry, we can't help you. It's collective defense. I can find you 100 ways in which America, while still being in NATO, can refuse to defend all these countries. Okay. So it is very, very possible to do that. I think Trump will do that. He will put such a strain on European resources. Now, everybody thinks that Europe has decided to rearm. Yay, great, wonderful. Do you know how chaotic Europe is? I want all our viewers to Google the Pluton missile and the Hades missile. The Pluton missile was a short-range ballistic missile that France developed in the 1960s and started, 60s. I think 50s itself it was developed. I don't know. Anyway, 60s definitely. It was in operation through the 60s and 70s. It was 120 to 150 kilometers. Small tactical warhead. And the whole point was, if Germany fell, protecting France, then at the border in the Rhineland, France would launch nuclear strikes to signal to Russia, to the Soviet Union, thus far and no further. Okay. And it would not be threatening enough to get a Russian nuclear response because France had not nuclear bombed Soviet territory. This was the thinking behind it. In the 80s, they wanted to replace this missile and they came up with the Hades.
Okay.
The biggest opposition to Hades starting in 84 when deployment started was from Germany. And Germany's argument was, you're going to be firing this into the Rhineland, where German troops will be fighting to the last man to prevent Soviet troops from entering France. This is a nuclear stab in our back. And France stopped development of the Hades and they got rid of the entire Pluton Hades stockpile.
Okay.
Now, Britain has the luxury of the English Channel. So their nuclear thinking is... Now remember, conventional powers think differently about defense than nuclear powers do. And island states think very differently about defense than continental powers do. Now you have continental nuclear thinking, you have continental non-nuclear thinking, and you have continental, non-continental offshore nuclear thinking. This is not a compatible military strategy. It is compatible when there is one America guiding all of you.
Yes.
It is not compatible when America gets out of the picture. The Pluton Hades fiasco being the classic case of how it actually threatens to destroy bilateral relations in Europe. Okay. Now, the need for Germany, France, and Britain to get all these Eastern European countries into NATO was that they wanted a buffer between them and
Russia.
The problem is your definition of buffer. You think they're a buffer, you're actually expanding the conflict zone. It is a buffer in time of war in that you're not going to get slaughtered. But they aren't buffers in the classic sense that they're neutral. They are NATO, which means you're extending the threat. So the definition of buffer also falls apart then. The problem with the eastern states, which have the biggest threat, which is Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, and Finland. Why do they want, Poland? Why do they want others? Because they've each got 150 to 200 kilometers worth of border with Russia. They want other NATO powers to have bigger borders with Russia so that the threat is evened out across the entire border. So everybody is incentivized towards NATO expansion. Because the Latvian, Lithuanian, Estonian, Polish belief is we each have about 200 kilometers, but Finland has 1,300 kilometers. So it's more likely that they will attack Finland first. Ukraine has about 2,000 plus kilometers, 2,200 odd kilometers. So they will then attack Ukraine first. So Finland wants Ukraine in NATO because, oh my God, we are now the biggest country. No, let's get Ukraine in because that will become a bigger border and therefore a more of a threat to Russia. Now, you should think being Finland or Ukraine, you would say, bhai, the Russians haven't attacked us. We are not going to get involved in this. No. You threaten them. You go on threaten them saying, see, Russia is going to do this. Russia is going to do this. Russia is going to do this. You keep goading Russia. And when Russia does it, Finland is like, oh my God, now we need to join NATO. So you terrorize these countries. You panic them out. You create self-fulfilling prophecies. So understand, everybody was incentivized in the system to create a threat for Russia, to turn Russia into a threat. There was not one country in NATO that wasn't incentivized into turning Russia into a threat. With Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland, this started off because they were dirt poor. They needed money. So they started using NATO membership, corollary with EU membership. Give us EU, give us more money, otherwise you'll start blocking in NATO and things like that.
Okay.
So, for them, it was more money. And who's going to take Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia seriously? Now Poland is an actual power. In those days, it was not. Now, how do you make yourself a big power? You claim there's a Russian threat. It's like mummy isn't paying attention to me. How do I make mummy pay more attention to me? Mummy, he's trying to kill me. And mummy's automatically, worry, my baby who's trying to kill. This is the game. Everybody has been incentivized into a conflict. And that way is eerily similar to World War I, where everybody kind of sleepwalked, almost intentionally, but sleepwalked into a situation that suddenly became out of their control. Now Trump is pulling back from the precipice. This is problem one with Europe. Problem two with Europe is European defense industry itself. In America, when Lockheed Martin or Boeing decide to make anything, they will get the best subcomponent from somewhere at the best price that they can, wholesaler price. In Europe, that's not the way European defense works.
Is it like L1 of India?
It is worse than L1 of India. It is not even a competitive process technically.
Achha.
Because what will happen is there will be one manufacturer here who will be producing a mediocre product. But say Portugal manufactures component Z.
Okay.
And Slovakia manufactures component Z as well. The Slovakian component is the same quality as the Portuguese component, but is 1/3 the price. Portugal, however, signs on to the co-development. You now can't choose the Slovakian component.
Okay.
You have to pay 3 times the price for the exact same quality. Or Italy manufactures something which is good, but the Czech Republic manufactures something which is even better. But because Italy has signed on to the co-development,
Italy will get
the inferior product gets it. So you can't. America builds an integrated system. Europe does Frankensteins. Not exactly because they integrate it well, but they do Frankensteins. Which is why the Rafale is probably more effective right now than the Eurofighter, because the Eurofighter was a mishmash. Initially, France was part of the Eurofighter program. They insisted on a French engine. And the Europeans were like, boss, the French engine is inferior. We can't use it. So France left the program and started up their own program. Which is why Europe now has 3 fighters. All Canard fighters. Gripen, Rafale, Eurofighter.
But they also have F-35.
They're buying F-35. The ones that aren't part of the Eurofighter, some which are even part of the Eurofighter buy F-35.
Right. So there is also this saying that, some people are talking about that they have the skill switch. I don't know whether it is a fact or not.
So I think Ukraine has proven very decisively that there is no kill switch. What happens is commercial intelligence is cut off. Intel is cut off. So you can't target. That's never been a problem for India. That is why we got the Gagan augmentation system.
Okay.
So even if the Americans cut off Intel, they can't cut off the missile, they can't cut off the plane, they can cut off the intel which the plane uses for targeting. See, think of it this way. If an arms deal is a drug deal, the fighter or the missile is not the cocaine. The fighter or the missile is the tube you have made to snort the cocaine. It is the piece of aluminium foil that you're using. It is the credit card that you're using to cut the cocaine. The cocaine is the intelligence. It's the whole ISR system. Information, surveillance, reconnaissance.
Okay.
Completely fused data, usable data, time-sensitive data that is given to you in consumable packages immediately for immediate strike.
Okay.
And immediate battle damage assessment post-strike. People don't realize this because in India, we don't do proper BDA or ISR, right? We're more focused on the platform than we are on what the platform can achieve, which is why even 1 month after the Balakot strikes, we didn't have proper images to produce. So this becomes, Indians don't get this. Indian defense doesn't get this. They think the missile is the cocaine. It is not the cocaine. It's the chill. I don't know. Do you smoke cocaine? Must be. I don't know. Chillam hoga. Chillam mein ganja peete hain. Ganja or hashish, something. Whatever. It is all the equipment that goes with the drug. The drug is the intelligence. That is what really hurts you. So if you do something and go up against America, they'll cut off the intel. They can't make the plane stop flying. They can't make the missile go off or prevent the missile from launching or anything like that. And, I think Ukraine is the biggest slap in the face of all these kill switch wankers that have permeated Twitter and YouTube.
So now when UK and France, they're talking about nuclear umbrella, they've got what, 500 odd,
They can go up to about 500-600 warheads
and
each.
we're talking about Russia, which
they've
has
probably got
5,000?
about, I would say France has about 200 odd missiles and less. I mean, 180 odd warheads, and UK would have less than 100 warheads right now.
So 300, 400?
But they have the industrial capacity and the ability to rapidly scale up to about 500 to 600 each. So about 1,200 warheads.
So my question is, hypothetically, so they've always been fighting. The French and the Brits, they have been fighting for many years. Hypothetically, in case Russia invades France, why will UK protect?
They won't.
They won't.
So the whole reason that the French developed their independent nuclear arsenal was because of what happened with Sinai. Americans let them down over the Sinai campaign, the Suez, for 1956 Suez thing. And the French were like, listen, are you going to, if Paris is threatened, are you going to risk Washington DC for Paris? You're not. Paris will have to protect Paris. That is why they went nuclear. So you can promise a nuclear umbrella to someone. But even during the Cold War, people don't realize this. America had agreements with every single country out there to station nuclear weapons with them. We now know with the benefit of hindsight that many countries were in fact given nuclear codes.
Okay.
Which would be a violation of the NPT technically, maybe. It depends on how you read. Like all legal language, there's 100 ways of interpreting.
So they can flaunt whatever.
For example, the Dutch P-3 Orions, which is the predecessor of the P-8 Poseidon, the naval patrol aircraft, they had the ability to drop nuclear depth charges.
Achha.
And the permission and the codes for dropping those nuclear depth charges had been given to Dutch naval airmen. So it wasn't just that missiles were stationed there. In at least the Dutch case that we know about, command authority was delegated to the Dutch military. Right? So America also, it wasn't just that America has nuclear weapons and we're providing you with a nuclear shield. You actually had to deploy those nuclear weapons in every single country. And you had to give them some level of control or oversight over those weapons for them to feel reassured. One of the ways they could be ensured that America will protect you was to become a big economy. Japan and Korea were never under doubt that America would protect them because they started industrializing very, very rapidly. And so they made Japan especially, but now Korea, Japan especially made itself so indispensable to the American industrial base in complementarity that it was seen as an extension of the American industrial base. So you will protect your own industrial base. Therefore, you will have to use nuclear weapons to protect Japan.
Whatever I have read, the Japanese submarines are of much better quality than what we have right now.
The Japanese submarines are extraordinary.
Yeah.
As far as conventional submarines go, I think nobody has better submarines than the Japanese.
Better than Americans?
The Americans don't do conventional submarines. They only do nuclear. So they've got an all-nuclear fleet.
Yeah.
France has an all-nuclear fleet. The UK has an all-nuclear fleet.
Okay.
All three NATO nuclear powers have only nuclear submarines. They do not have conventional submarines. The Swedes, the French produce nuclear submarines, but they don't have them in their own navy.
Okay.
So the Germans, the Swedes, the Spanish, and the French produce conventional submarines. The French don't use the conventional submarines that they produce. They sell it to other countries. So, European defense, getting into it is such a nightmare. I think Europe has forgotten how cacophonous it was. Look, it's fantastic. For me, it's popcorn time because I'm going to wait and watch all of this unravel. It's fine.
So how do we look at it from the Indian context? Will Ukraine, America, Europe, what do you think is going to happen in India?
First of all,
particularly because now summer is approaching. Will China do its mischief again?
No.
Because US is going to be busy here.
No. Look, we need to separate all of this.
Yes. Tell me.
China will do its own thing when it wants to. Okay. China will not have its guidelines dictated by XYZ. China has to correct historical wrongs as they see it. They are an aggrieved nation as they see it, victim nation, and they have to correct historical wrongs. Their history with India is that they crushed us in 62. That is not a record that needs to be relitigated. But Vietnam defeated them in the Vietnam War, in the Vietnam-China War. My estimate is between India and Vietnam, they will choose Vietnam first to set the record right. And China does need to enter a war sometime in this decade because we're seeing what's happening with their economy. Their construction is $3 trillion of unrecoverable assets. Their entire train system that Indians are so jealous about is $1 trillion in debt. Unrecoverable. All of it is completely unrecoverable. We don't know the extent of industrial bad debt, which may be phenomenal in this particular case. They need to create this war stimulus and a war economy to re-stimulate demand. My estimate was they would choose Vietnam. But India, the messaging is so crude. Ghar mein ghus ke mara. You may not be such a threat, but you're literally upgrading your threat status for them. It's literally like when the bull wants to attack you. See, you're a fit young man. I am a middle-aged fat guy who can't move. I decide to play hero. And to prevent the bull from attacking you, I take a red cloth and say, hey, toro, toro, toro. Now, boss, I can't run the way you can. But this is what India is unnecessarily attracting attention.
And they're 4-5 times bigger than us.
So China listen, basically it comes down to the size of the economy.
Yeah. 5
And I keep getting abused on defensive, offensive. When I said India will last for a month, but no more than a month. It is going to be the same thing out here. You can even last for 3-4 years by throwing millions of men to die like is happening in Ukraine. The problem is industrial supply chains will always win out.
They are much better than
you
us.
depend on their economy is much, much, much bigger than you. Their manufacturing base is infinitely bigger than yours. You don't really have a manufacturing base at all. You have a backup which America and Europe will supply you. You've seen what kind of supply they do with Ukraine. Is that the backup chain you want to depend on? Are you really going up? The story of the American Civil War, where the industrial North, in spite of having inferior generals, is able to defeat the richer but agrarian South. Ukraine versus Russia, where Russian military industry is so massive it dwarfs the Ukrainian military industry. It's the same with China. Your bravery doesn't matter. Talent doesn't matter. It comes down to industrial dynamics. That is the point of industry is, see, people don't understand industrialization because you have idiots like Arfan Habib who claim the Mughal Empire was industrial. Why? Because they had 10,000 people weaving at one spot. That is not industry. Industry is the application of chemical energy to the manufacturing process. Now, technically, Abhijit will not be able to lift this table. Chitresh will be young, muscular man will be able to lift this table. But if I have an exoskeleton, which helps me lift heavy loads, Abhijit will do as good a job as Chitresh can because it's the skeleton doing the lifting. I'm just the brain providing the brains and the control. Right? It doesn't matter if a fat man sits behind a Ferrari or a thin muscular man sits behind a Ferrari. The Ferrari will still go at 300 kilometers per hour. Right? So, here this bravery doesn't matter. The only way then that you can defeat the Chinese is guerrilla warfare, where you end up destroying your own country. And so this is with China. Let's keep this aside. Now let's focus on Europe. For India, our policy between Russia and China has always been divide and rule. We never want Russia and China to come together ever. We went on for the last 20 years telling the Americans and Europeans, you're unnecessarily provoking Russia. You're pushing Russia into Chinese hands. They never listened to us. And finally, when it came true, they then turned it around on us and said, you're supporting aggression. We should have turned around very aggressively and said, fuckers, we told you, stop pushing them, stop pushing them, stop pushing them. You didn't listen, fuck you. Instead of taking the morally arrogant stance, we were like, oh, okay, sorry, there's too much pressure, whatever nonsense. Anyway, what Trump is doing now, if it ends up in a US-American in a US-Russian alliance, not immediately, over a course of time to contain China, it will be India's wet dream come true. Literally. We'll be jizzing in our pants. Nothing suits us better than Russia and America coming together. Okay, because then China faces a real threat. The problem is, the big threat for Europe as they see it of their own creation is Russia. Who's the only country on Russia's periphery that can control Russia? China. So then Europe starts aligning with China. This is where between us and the Americans, we need to play divide and rule with Europe very, very carefully. We need to break up European cohesion. If anything, I would say we need to be more dependent on France, buy 50% of their nuclear company, Areva, buy 50% of DCNS, their naval company, buy 50% shares of as many Swedish and French defense assets, at least French defense assets, so that France's diffidence, as it's called, autosuffisance, strategic ambiguity, gets heightened. They feel they've got another partner, and we sell our influence in Moscow as a moderating influence. We need to start picking European countries, choosing European countries and wean them away. We don't have the industrial strength or the wealth to do it. That is the problem. So it's a pipe dream. This is not the time. Europe will try to unite. We must do everything to break up Europe.
Because they have...
If we do not collectively, Europe will get behind China. That's not good for us.
Not at all.
This is where we have to do microbalancing. If America gets closer to Russia, Europe will be a problem. We don't want European technology, at least defense technology, reaching China. Break them up. Slowly, surely break them up. Set the plan in process now.
Karenge?
Arey nahi yaar, we're a third world country. We don't do anything properly.
See, another thing that I feel, because China needs India for its
China,
market.
listen, no. Let us be very clear about this. China does not need India.
In any way.
In any way. Okay. Finished products, most of it is us exporting them. Well, a large part of it is us exporting them. What do you call it? Raw materials. And it's a colonial trade basically. And they export a huge quantity of finished products to us.
Balance of trade is anyways in favor of them.
It is in favor of them, but understand $80-90 billion a year isn't a big deal for them. You understand? Will it hurt them in the short term? Yes. But understand, our economy will collapse without what they are providing us. Not everybody can afford Apple phones. Your economy runs, your Zomato, banking, Android. Net banking, everything runs on cheap Chinese phones. No, forget Android. Android is American, but it runs on cheap American phones.
Correct.
Our dependence on them is far greater than their dependence on us.
Our laptops.
They can do without $80-90 billion of Indian trade. You can't do without $80-90 billion without of Chinese smartphones and electronics coming in. You get hurt a lot more. So, every time I hear Indians say America needs us more than we need them.
Right.
China needs us more than we need them. We are building roads in Iran. Has anyone on this program ever been to Iran? Iranian companies build better buildings, more sophisticated buildings with much higher quality buildings and much higher quality roads than you can. Like hell, you need Indians coming there and building diddly squat for them.
In fact, it was Gadkari's yesterday's comment about detailed project reports and how he's going to go after the civil contractors.
See, Gadkari ji understands very well what the problem is. He's been on these roads. He can see already on the Delhi-Mumbai expressway, which now goes up to Jaipur, there are cracks and things like that happening.
The flying car happened.
The flying car and all that stuff is happening, right? There is no enforcement of road rules on these things as well. He understands what's happening, that these guys are making money and whatever. India needs Doge more than anybody else, by the way. But anyway, But Gadkari is the outlier out here. Nobody else has the guts to take on the bureaucracy. Maybe Gadkari and Smriti Irani. Smriti Irani understood. She caught all the corrupt schemes of Doordarshan. She caught them. But she was punished for catching them. Gadkari ji is too powerful politically to be punished for catching them. So, this is one of those things where this Indian belief that we're so indispensable, we are not indispensable,
Nobody's indispensable
to anyone.
Yeah.
India least of all so. So, we need to get this out of our heads that China is too dependent on us, right? But, India lives on delusion.
I think the only place where we are absolute king is cricket, and that's it.
Are we?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
BCCI is.
I don't watch cricket. I'm the George Bernard Shaw school. It's a game played by 11 fools and watched by 11,000 other fools.
More than that. Much more than that.
Sure. But I think, I personally feel, that masturbation is a more rewarding experience than cricket. I think masturbators are more talented than cricketers anyway.
All right. So, coming back home or closer to home, what is happening in Bhutan? I mean, the Bhutan PM is coming to India. What do you see? Can we crystal gaze something? Do you think something is happening?
Listen, the Bhutanese are brutal, nasty, duplicitous, two-faced characters. They always have been for quite some time now. People seem to have forgotten that they ethnically cleansed 25% of their population, which was Hindu. Now it's about 20% of the population. At one time, it was much higher. And they kicked them all out back into Nepal and India. And America actually took 80,000 of them.
How many? We're talking about which year?
We're talking about the late 80s and early 90s.
So, what was the percentage of Hindu population back then?
Much higher, about 35-40%.
And we are now at 20?
20 or less.
Okay. And we are giving them security guarantee.
And these are people who had been living there for hundreds of years.
Of course.
They decided, you're not Bhutanese, one fine day, get the hell out. And they went on raping, killing, kicking them all out.
Why is it not there anywhere?
Because Indians are stupid. We don't maintain archives. We don't maintain records. We don't maintain a historical memory. India is the only idiot country which, after an invader come and slaughtered you, destroyed all your temples, you come up with bullshit like Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb.
And we name a road after them.
And we name roads after them. Yeah. Okay. So we're idiots. You forget that. This is a genocidal country. It's the first country in the modern age that has gotten away without reproach by cleansing 20-25% of its population.
And what was the drama of coming to Mahakumbh and all those things?
That because they understand Indians are idiots. You kill Hindus at home, but then you come and do Gayatri Mantra at the Mahakumbh. Ganga has forgiven you. How can I hold a grudge against you? You understand? We're a bunch of idiots. This you can see from YouTube. We were discussing this before we went live. Italy, YouTubers go give other people and spit on other people for trying to cook Italian food. India are the only self-validation seeking lumps of shit who will welcome a white man to India to cook you a lousy bloody biryani and go gaga over it. And this has now become a market on YouTube. White people commenting on Indians cooking Indian food. Do you follow Uncle Roger?
No, I don't think.
Uncle Roger is fantastic. He's this Malaysian guy, Malaysian Chinese guy, who comments on white people cooking their food. So he's literally destroyed Jamie Oliver's career.
And do we have something like that back home?
No. For us, white man, Jamie Oliver coming cooking Indian food, we'll go, oh, Jamie Oliver cooked curry. Forget it tastes like a rat's ass. He cooked shit curry. Right. But we'll go, oh my God, Jamie Oliver cooked curry. My God, curry is becoming so popular. Curry is the next thing, curry is the new pizza. We are such third-rate people. We seek the validation of the white man so obsessively, compulsively. What do you do?
So, coming to Bhutan. So
Bhutan is one of those things where the Bhutanese king comes and does all his tamasha out here and we forgive him everything.
But he's been coming quite a lot this year.
It doesn't matter. He's still a duplicitous little piece of shit. He's not the father of his own child, no? Yeah, that's that Lamsang Sering or whatever, the editor of the newspaper. I don't know if he's the father of his own child or whatever, but the Lamsang Sering, the editor of the Bhutanese or whatever it's called, newspaper, goes around telling everyone that he has slept with the crown princess and fathered her child. Okay, now what ends up happening with this fellow is they are cutting a deal with China somehow. We don't know the exact contours. Remember when my friend Detresfa, Daniel Simon on Twitter, proved that China had taken over a huge chunk of Bhutan. The embassy in Delhi and the Bhutanese foreign ministry went out of their way to dispute it. And Daniel Simon had done that story with Vishnu Shom at NDTV. When they called him out, Vishnu and Daniel took out the photos and said, now explain yourselves. And then they had to beat a retreat. They have come to some kind of territorial understanding with the Chinese where you give them 1/3 of your territory and Bhutan's remaining territory is recognized as sovereign. You help us screw over India. Bhutan is a snake. If you see a snake and a Bhutanese, kill the snake first. Kill the Bhutanese first. Never kill snakes. Snakes are very good. There is a reason they are considered sacred in India. Do you know why snakes are considered sacred? Every other civilization treats the snake as evil. We're the only people who treat snakes as sacred. Why? Because they're terrible creatures which kill a lot of people, but they prevent famine and starvation because they eat rodents. Rodents cause all kinds of diseases and they infect your crops. And so we understand, even though it is such a fierce, terrible creature, it actually saves a million more lives. For every human killed by a snake bite, 1 million people are saved by snakes eating rats and other rodents. Which is why we worship snakes. You should never kill snakes. But if you see a Bhutanese, yeah.
So there is nothing happening with him coming here for the last 1 year.
It's eyewash. They're coming more and more to Delhi to get a public image that when they stab us in the back, we're stupid enough and supine enough to believe we've not been screwed over.
Okay. So do we still have their security guarantees and stuff? And why do we need to? Or should we?
No. What security? We've never had Bhutanese security guarantees.
So we are the one who fought Chinese.
Yeah, that doesn't matter. Bhutan never fought the Chinese. No,
Yeah.
they helped their porters, helped the Indian army, and they allowed Indian army transit, which is as per the treaty. That's it.
And then what stops India from taking over Bhutan?
You can't just take over.
The way they did with Sikkim.
No, but Sikkim, the parliament voted. Please remember, we didn't take over Sikkim. Sikkim dismissed its own king and its legislator requested India to take over Sikkim.
So we can do something similar here. Maybe 5 years down the line or whatever.
But please remember, you seem to forget, you know, people get taken in by all this gross national happiness bullshit. Bhutan is a horrible dictatorship. You say anything against the king, you disappear at night, your whole family disappears at night. Gross national happiness is the bullshit they feed you so that you don't see their torture chambers and their executions. There are many people, politicians in Bhutan who have never been heard from. And one of the ways the king keeps everybody in this thing is using this newspaper called the Bhutanese to run hit jobs on ministers claiming they were corrupt. No proof needed. They're removed and jailed and they disappeared from public view. So it is actually Stalinist purges. But because you can claim it wasn't the government that ordered, the newspaper exposed him. Look, brave journalism. The same journalist who claims he's actually the biological father of the crown prince. What do you do?
So let's talk about what's going on in Canada. We now have the new prime minister.
Who's worse than the old prime minister.
Acha. But he does not have any political background.
Justin Trudeau is a himbo. Mark Carney was the brains behind the himbo. Justin Trudeau was wine mixed with water. Mark Carney isn't wine. Mark Carney is distilled wine, which is brandy. You know, it says fine champagne cognac, Hennessy or XO or VSOP cognac. Cognac is what? You take champagne, you distill it. That is cognac. Mark Carney is cognac. Justin Trudeau was wine mix, 50% wine, 50% champagne, 50. It wasn't even champagne. Yeah, he was cheap, Sula Fratelli, cheap wine that a European won't even. Even cows get better wine in Europe than what Justin Trudeau is. But that's the difference. You've actually gone to a much, much more ideological, much, much more dangerous, much, much more duplicitous guy than Justin Trudeau.
And what about his experience in Harvard, Oxford, and Goldman Sachs? Does that...
You're explaining it yourself. Is Goldman Sachs something Goldman Sachs, Harvard are the same things that George Soros is intrinsically linked with. They coordinate their investment strategies. They coordinate their ideological indoctrination at Harvard. They coordinate their investment strategies with Goldman Sachs.
And do we see anti-India activities continuing, or
of course,
will they increase?
Listen, the difference is Pierre Poilievre is dependent on Khalistanis, but Khalistanis are dependent on Trudeau and Carney. The Liberal Party has the Khalistanis by the balls. But the Khalistanis have Pierre Poilievre by their balls, by his balls. What are you going to do? You saw what happened with this fellow Sukhman Gill in the primaries in one a Canadian riding just this last week. A fellow, and Sukhman Gill is a conservative, Pierre Poilievre's party. He is not a member of the party. The rules were all broken to allow him to contest. It turned out all the members he brought into the party were all fake signatures. Something like that. I'm not the exact details. I've tweeted it out. You can go to my timeline and check it, but that's what's happened. Just run a search for Sukhman Gill in this thing. You look at people like Tim Uppal, this Jasraj Hallan, who's the shadow finance minister. Jasraj Hallan is a dangerous bloody Khalistani. Tim Uppal is the idiot who can never, he's the affirmative action idiot, who's such a moron he can never be anything other than multicultural affairs minister. I mean, literally, if I got my dog and him to take an IQ test, my dog would come out higher than Tim Uppal. Tim Uppal may be the most visible face, but he's also a moron.
So the elections...
Jasraj Hallan is dangerous. That other guy, Parm Gill, who's a shaved, he looks like you actually. Sardi is even more dangerous than Jasraj Hallan. The worst is that fellow Arpan Khanna, who's a Hindu, but his wife is completely Sikh terrorist. These people should never be given a visa to come in India. You need to track who they're calling in India and put everybody they call or communicate with on terror watch lists. Will we do it? No. See, you can't blame the Canadians for not taking action when you yourself are not willing to take action at home.
So is he going to come to India? What do you think?
No, it doesn't matter if he comes to India. The point is the relationship isn't going anywhere.
Okay.
It doesn't matter if it's liberal, conservative, NDP, whatever. It's not going anywhere.
It's going to go south only.
It's going to go south.
And the elections are due in
October. The best you can hope for is stasis. Unfortunately, it's going to go south, more south.
So it's going to become the Pakistan of...
It is already the Pakistan, yeah. See, the difference is they are not actually supporting terrorism. We need to understand Khalistanis today are not terrorists. In fact, calling them terrorists, I myself am guilty of this. What they are drug and gun peddlers. It's an organized crime racket that uses secessionism as political whitewashing of their criminal enterprises. What are they about? They're about guns and drugs and illegal immigration. These are the three things they control. Remember, all illegality is fungible. A cocaine dealer isn't going to say no to heroin if the business opportunity opens up to him. A heroin and cocaine dealer isn't going to say no to guns if the business opportunity opens up. An illegal immigration guy is not going to say no to drugs when drugs open up. And a drugs and illegal immigration guy is not going to say no to guns when an opportunity for guns opens up. That is exactly what has happened out here. Punjab is a state that missed the partial industrialization that happened in the 1990s thanks to liberalization and Narasimha Rao. So they're still stuck in this whole feudal thing. The whole thing runs on illegality. The whole state runs on illegality, basically. And what you have there are all these illegal migration rackets, which then got into drugs. They pump cash, black money, into the Canadian political system. So they've made themselves indispensable. How do they run it? Through trucking businesses for transporting all the drugs through Canada. They've also become the local franchisees for fentanyl production. Okay. And have you noticed why does Punjabi rap have so much about guns and drugs?
Women, guns, drugs. That's it.
Well, women is natural, unless you're a homosexual. But women is natural. The guns and drugs are to socially validate and make cool drug and gun culture. Okay. It started infecting Punjab, or maybe it started in Punjab. I don't know the exact dynamics, but it is chronic in Canada. Now, notice this has gone to the point where, India, you can say, is a third world country that doesn't have much power to enact or to enforce its will abroad. Trump couldn't get it done. When it came to stopping fentanyl smuggling, Canadian politicians across the board, left and right, wanted to protect their own fentanyl smugglers who give them off-the-record proceeds of fentanyl smuggling, of all drug smuggling, of guns, and allow all Canadians to suffer as a result of that, rather than give in to Trump. You think Canadian politicians who, on the behalf of these Khalistanis, are willing to take on America and Trump are going to bat an eyelid for India? No. It's good. I mean, I wish the Canadians well. They've made their choices. They've made an informed choice to stick with this. Both sides of the aisle have. I wish them well. It's not going to go well for Canada because we've been through this in the past. But, you've made your choices. You're adults. You shouldn't infantilize people. They've made their choices and they're free to live and die by them.
Okay, so on that note, thank you so much for talking to us. It was really, really an honor speaking to you once again. Guys, I would request you to please put in your comments. Do ask specific questions, and we would love to hear from you.
Even if you abuse me, yes.
And ask him to come once again.
Yes.
He's promised he will see me every 7 to 10 days.
Not 7 to 10 days, once a month.
Okay, let's do it once a month, but just make sure he does that. Thank you so much for watching Defensive Offense English. Thank you.
Praise be to Allah.